Terima kasih banget.
That's
Terima
all
kasih
from
Mbak
me.
Sarita, menarik
Thank you
sekali
very
ini
much,
soal
Mbak
sagu
Sarita,
ini.
regarding the sagu.
Untuk
Very
restorasi
interesting
gambut. Sebetulnya banyak sekali
presentation.
spesies lain yang pernah diteliti juga ya, saya lihat.
Actually, there's a lot of
Semoga ini nanti jadi
species that have been
diskusi yang
studied
menarik.
that I see, and hopefully this will
Selanjutnya
become an
ada
interesting discussion.
satu sharing
Next,
experience lain yang sangat menarik juga, yaitu
we have
dari
another
Bapak
experience sharing that
Anders
is very
Hagen.
interesting from Mr.
Beliau
Anders
adalah
Hagen.
managing partner dari
He's
Lionheart
a managing
Agrotech.
partner from
Ini
Lionheart
perusahaan
Agrotech.
yang mengembangkan
This is a
kelapa
company
dengan
that
sangat menarik.
is
Anders
developing
Hagen bekerja di
coconuts,
perbankan
and it's very
investasi selama
interesting.
25
He has
tahun,
worked in investment
berbasis
banking
di
for
Hong Kong.
25 years, based in
Posisi
Hong Kong.
terakhirnya adalah
His last
CEO
position
Asia
was the
for
CEO
BTG
Asia for
Pactual.
BTG
Beliau
Pactual.
mengundurkan diri pada
He
tahun
resigned in
2013 untuk fokus pada
2013 to
pembangunan proyek
focus
pangan
on
dan biofuel
food project
yang
development
berkelanjutan
and
secara
biofuel that
pribadi.
is sustainable
Beliau telah
personally.
berinvestasi di
He
beberapa
has
proyek
invested
greenfield,
in several
mulai dari
greenfield
energi
projects,
biomasa
from
hingga
biomass
produksi udang
energy to
berkelanjutan.
sustainable shrimp
Anders telah
production.
bekerja sama dengan
Anders
akademisi dan
has
praktisi secara
worked
global
together with
untuk
academics and practitioners
mengembangkan
globally to
model
develop
untuk meningkatkan
a model
produktivitas
to
energi dan pertanian
increase
pangan dan
energy and food
mendirikan Lionheart
agriculture
Agrotech
productivity.
pada
And he
tahun
established
2015
Lionheart Agrotech
untuk
in
fokus pada
2015
peningkatan
to
produktivitas dalam
focus on
pertanian
improving
dalam
productivity in
pertanian
agriculture,
kelapa menggunakan
in
bahan
coconut
tanaman
farming,
hibrida,
using
pemupukan,
hybrid
dan panen
plants,
berbasis bunga. Kombinasi
fertilizing, as
faktor-faktor
well
ini dapat
as
meningkatkan
flower-based
produktivitas
harvest.
sebuah perkebunan
The
kelapa
combination
hingga
of these factors
50
can
kali
increase
lipat.
productivity of
Lionheart
coconut
menjalankan pertanian
grows
berdasarkan
up to 50
prinsip-prinsip ini
times.
di
Lionheart
Palawan,
is
Filipina.
practicing
Mari
this
kita
such
simak
agricultural
pengalaman beliau.
principles based. Let
Bapak
us
Anders
hear
Hagen,
his
time is
experience.
yours. The floor is
So
yours.
Anders Hagen, time
Thank
is
you
yours.
very much.
Thank you, Chandra.
Beliau nggak yeah. You have 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think I won't need them, so you can catch up on time.
Thank you.
TLFF, thank you, Chandra. Thank you for the invitation. I am sharing just a couple of slides on our experience in Palawan. Lionheart was set up in 2015, as we say, to focus on both growing, planting, and processing coconut products. What our model is really, I want to walk you through this in calorific terms, because all agriculture is about producing calories, and we don't have infinite land resources. So we need to use the land we have as efficiently as we can. So if you look at a traditional farmer in coconut, he has, let's say he has 1 hectare, let's just use 1 hectare as the common denominator here. He has 100 trees. They were probably planted by his grandfather. They yield around 50 coconuts now, and the yield is going down every year. 50 coconuts per tree per year is the same as 5,000 kcals. In other words, enough to feed around 10 people per hectare in calorific terms. That's a really useful common denominator. To put that in context, that's about the same as rain-fed rice. In other words, rice without fertilizers or chemicals. So that's really not very good use of land. I know there's 3 million hectares of this in Indonesia, but these 3 million hectares need to produce more calories than they're doing now. How do we do that? If we replace the traditional varieties with hybrid coconut, we get 3 times more yield per tree. And that's actually probably more than that, because like I said, the trees in the existing plantations are getting old and their yield is reducing every year. So you plant hybrids, and it's pretty expensive. So what I'm talking about here is something that does require capital. So Ivo, we need to have a talk after this. But we've done this already in Palawan. So we have about 500,000 hybrids in the ground. So 15,000 kcals now. So now you can see we are feeding about 25 people per hectare. It's getting better. If we irrigate, so I'm still using the old pattern of 100 trees per hectare in the hybrid situation. But of course, if you allow, there's always going to be enough sunlight, right? There's always going to be enough CO2. But the limiting factor is often water. So if you have access to water and you can irrigate, and what we do is in fact fertigate. So we put organic fertilizer in our irrigation. That means you can put as much as 400 trees per hectare without reducing the yield per tree. This is verified with PCA, and we planted our first trees 4 or 5 years ago, and it's going really well. So now we can feed, so that's 4 times more now, right? We are now feeding 100 people per hectare. We're cruising, but we can do better than that. The calories we're talking about in the first 3 boxes there, that's essentially coconut oil, right? That is copra. That's the white meat, which you squeeze out the coconut oil, and that's your end product. In fact, about 3/4 of what the tree feeds into the bunch of coconuts is essentially wasted. That's the husk and the shell and the stem and all that stuff. That's a big waste of what is potentially a rich food source. How does that work? Well, you're probably all familiar with ketchup mayonnaise and coconut sugar and how you sweeten the soy sauce and ketchup mayonnaise. That's coconut sugar. That coconut sugar is harvested from the tree before the coconut develops. Okay, so it's kind of the raw material that will make over time the coconut with the stem and the shell and the husk. That's a waste of resources. That means traditional coconut farming only achieves a 25% harvest efficiency, whereas if we harvest the nira, the sugar juice, straight from photosynthesis, we get 4 times more harvest efficiency. So we are now in the Philippines, in our farm, harvesting 240,000 kcals per hectare per year. Okay, so that is the productivity increase. So you see, what we're not doing here is breaking new land. Okay. We're just using the existing land more efficiently. What's the impact? One thing I think you are probably aware of when you think about ketchup mayonnaise is that it employs a lot of people. And that's really the big difference. In traditional coconut farming with coconuts as the harvest, the labor component is very, very low, okay? When you harvest nira, you need a lot of manual intervention for the harvesting, the tapping, the cutting, the slicing of the flour. And that means it's a job machine. And you can afford to pay good wages because the productivity increase per hectare is so big that the profitability of the business is very healthy. So it's not a problem paying normal wages to the workers. In Rizal, in Palawan, when we came in 2015, it's a tribal area. So we had to go through FPIC and National Committee for the Indigenous People and all these. But once we got started, we managed to push the poverty level down from the 65% where we started to about 25 now. And that's going nowhere but south, because we are really employing everybody that wants a job, and they're all paid the official rate, which is it's probably actually closer to $7 today. The peso has strengthened. So there's a huge amount of livelihood in this coconut model. In terms of SDG 2, end hunger, I interpret that as being efficient with land use and resource factor inputs. So like I said, you can see the model here, 400 people is what we can feed per hectare in calorific terms. And that's 4 times better than oil palm. So the amount of calories you harvest from a hectare of oil palm is only a quarter of what we do in this model. So that's really important. There's another very important factor, which is water and fertilizer use. If you compare this to sugarcane is a crop that needs to be cut down every time you get your harvest, which is the sugar juice. It's the sugar juice you want, right? But every time you get the sugar juice, you can only get at it if you cut down the cane, and then the next season you have to grow it again. And it's that process of cutting and regrowing biomass that consumes an enormous amount of water. So sugar cane needs about 2,500 to 3,000 liters of water per kilo of sugar. But in our model, when we harvest the nira, we don't cut down the tree when we harvest the sugar, right? So we leave the tree for 30, 40 years. And that means we only consume 200 liters per kilo sugar. This is phenomenally important. The same applies, of course, to fertilizers. Then we highlight SDG 8. I'm actually a macroeconomist by training, not an agriculturist. So the multiplier effect of putting money into the economy in the place where we came has had fantastic impact on the people. Not only those that get a basic job, Those that make it are slightly more specialized and higher paying job, but it has a knock-on effect on the whole economy because people have money in their pockets, and that means you have all sorts of other industries popping up. That also means that you're reducing the flow of people from rural to urban. So people can have a fruitful career at home, which is, they love it. It's so appreciated the opportunities they get. Finally, carbon, very, very important. The hybrid coconut tree in our configuration, so 400 trees per hectare fertilized and irrigated, will remove 4 times more carbon from the atmosphere than a tropical rainforest. That sounds crazy. You don't believe me? Give me a call. I've got all the numbers. So finally, and the reason we are working with TLFF, of course, is the whole landscape story. And what we're doing in Palawan, we have an area called Mount Mantalingahan, which is a protected area. It's on the UNESCO heritage list. And of course, not because they're bad people, but because of necessity, the host community there had always exploited the area for logging, for wildlife poaching, all the things we don't want in a protected area like that. It's a biodiversity hotspot. It's really, really important to protect this. So our farm, as you can see, is down by the national highway. And because it's an employment machine, we have drawn people away from the protected area and into far better paying jobs. We have a little shed, which we call the Chainsaw Museum, where all the illegal loggers have deposited their chainsaws and they're now working in the project. So this model is a very good protector of landscape assets. And we're looking at, with TLFF, an area in Kalimantan, which has both peat, primary forest, and lots and lots and lots of mangroves. So there's plenty to protect, and we're making money doing it. That's all I have.
Thank you. That is so amazing. The innovation that you apply is actually at the level of what is harvested at the plant level. And it's amazing to see what has been the outcome of this. Thank you, Pak Anders. So now, after all of these wonderful presentations, sekarang kita akan masuk